All right, welcome folks to our community speaker night. I have titled this Movers and Shakers. I will note that that was one of our panel guests this evening, Camille Ahmad's ideas to title it that. So I did change the original title, so just shout out there. We'll get started with our territorial acknowledgement for this evening. So this on the screen, as you will see, is our University of Waterloo standard territorial acknowledgement. I will read through that, but then I will add my own personal component to our acknowledgement as well. So the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the Attawaneradon, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work toward reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is centralized within our Indigenous Relations Office. So I am Métis of the Red River. My great-grandparents and their families can be found on most documented lists of the first families of the Red River Métis. My great-grandmother was Priscilla Mary Beeds, and my great-grandfather was William Henderson. My grandfather, Joseph Henderson, went to the Qu'Appelle Indian Residential School in LeBret, Saskatchewan. Many of his family members have been documented on scripts for which the government purchased their land for very little money. There is no existing Métis settlement today that I could go back to and say that my family is from, because due to this script system, they had to move around a lot. Through that displacement, I have family spread all over. On my dad's side, I am German. His grandfather settled here from Gotha, Germany. I share these parts of myself with all of you to share that I am a guest on these lands of the Attawaneradon, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples through displacement, but as well as through European ancestry and settling here. I carry many privileges on this land that is not mine, such as owning property, earning a living, and having access to resources that so many folks on their own lands do not have. In my own practice of decolonization, I live by the notions that youth are the center of the community, that 2S LGBTQIA+ folks have always been here and are to be nurtured, not just tolerated, and to continue to engage in difficult conversations about the ongoing impacts of colonization. So a few housekeeping items here. I know folks that have been coming to these sessions consistently. We go through these each time, but it's really important to stay consistent as we welcome you to a space. So I will go through them again. So you are free to have your cameras on or off. You can use the chat to share or use the raise hand function to speak out loud. You are welcome to participate at any level that you wish, and you will never be expected to share. You are more than welcome to attend an event just to be here. So pronouns and screen names. So as facilitators, we share our pronouns. I'm Tara, I use she, her pronouns. We note that we all have pronouns. And as you enter university, you may be coming to more and more spaces in which folks are introducing themselves while sharing theirs. We all have pronouns and we share ours to welcome folks to share theirs as well. We also recognize that some folks might go by a name that is different than their screen name. If this is you and you would like us to know, you can either privately message us to let us know, or if you feel comfortable to let us know in the chat, you can do that as well. And we also want to ensure that we are pronouncing names correctly. So if we have said your name wrong, we absolutely welcome you to correct us. And then we will now go through our group guidelines. Again, for those that have continued to come to our events, I know we go through these each time. But again, it's really important to go through them, not only to keep the space consistent, but also go through them as we welcome new folks into our space as well. So this is an inclusive and brave space, therefore everyone is welcome. We are committed to confidentiality among this group, but there are a few limits to that confidentiality. We ask that you be respectful, especially of individuals' pronouns. Ableist or discriminatory language will not be tolerated. Please give everybody their time to speak. So we try our best not to interrupt each other. We want to hear from everyone. So please try your best to use the raise hand feature if you would like to speak out loud. There's always time for feedback, so please let us know how we can support you best. Though this program has been offered for equity-deserving students to share their thoughts and experiences with one another, we don't expect anybody to educate one another when it comes to their own identities. So please be aware that if you have questions that somebody prefers not to answer, you may be referred to do your own research. We all have the right to pass. You will never be asked to participate in any way that you don't feel comfortable with. We will always try to put the questions in the chat as we go along so that participants can recall what was asked. And for our panel this evening, I will have a slide that has the questions up on the screen. And above all, don't be afraid to ask us questions. So we're always willing to stop, to clarify, to repeat something that we have said. Please stop us if you need clarification or you would like us to repeat something that we have shared. So I am going to introduce our guests for this evening. As I mentioned, this evening is our community leaders panel. So this evening we have Roshan James with us, we have Glodine Brown with us, we have Tina Paul, we have Neb Zachariah, we have Stephanie Byrenton, and we have Camille Ahmed. So I'm going to go through our biographies for each panel guest. And then after I have read the biographies, we will get into our questions. So I'll read the bios, and then each person that is here in our first question will share a little bit about the work that they do, and then we will move on from there. And then once we have gone through the questions that we have prepared, then we will open up the floor for anybody who is with us tonight to ask any questions that they would like. So we will start with Roshan James. So Roshan James, she, her, is a Tibetan Indian multidisciplinary artist, poet, and musician, living as a settler in southwestern Ontario. As part of the South Asian diaspora, Roshan researches and experiments to create work that embodies decolonization, identity, timelessness, mindfulness, purpose, and healing. Entrenched in her work is anti-oppression advocacy and representation of marginalized, queer, and melanated voices to help dismantle colonial, capitalistic systems. Roshan studied at Queen's University and the Center for Medieval Studies at the University of Toronto. And she holds an honors Bachelor of Arts degree in English literature from York University, summa cum laude. You'll find her on social media, most active on Instagram at Roshan_James. And I can put anybody that would like that's here tonight, I can put Instagram links in the chat as well if folks would like to have those. And next we have Glodine Brown. Glodine Brown, she, her, is an arts management professional, arts and culture writer, public art coordinator, and curator. She is the founder and editor of the arts and culture blog, Culture Fancier. The blog has been educating, entertaining, and inspiring audiences since 2016. And next we have Tina Paul. Tina Paul, she, her, is the equity leader at Camino Wellbeing and Mental Health. She believes that every conversation can contribute to building a more just and equitable world, a world in which each person's full humanity is centered and seen, a world in which conversations are bridges to connection and healing. Tina's international education and experience include a master's in disability studies from India and extensive experience in advocacy for people with disabilities. Over the last 16 years, Tina brings her experience in steering equity and inclusion practices in the realms of community services, career development, and adult education in the Kitchener-Waterloo community, as well as further education in community healing and peace building from Ontario Institute of Studies in Education. Her past work roles have included employment counseling, teaching in college environments, and community-based facilitation and outreach. Tina is passionate about nurturing transformative experiences through a values and strengths-based lens and creating a true sense of belonging for everyone. And next we have Camille Ahmed. Him is a first-generation immigrant and settler from Pakistan who identifies with various communities, including queer and Muslim. Passionate about mutual aid, resource distribution, and building communities of care, Camille is an organizer at Community Fridge KW that establishes and maintains public repositories of fresh donated foods and essential items for anyone to take from anytime. Camille also gets to be a restorative justice practitioner through community justice initiatives as the coordinator of the SULA program that addresses identity-based harm in crime and conflict through a restorative approach to intervention and mediation. He is a photographer, facilitator, speaker, vegetarian, and a big fan of farmers markets. Next, we have Stephanie Byrenton. Stephanie Byrenton, she, her, is a reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion advisor for the region of Waterloo in Kitchener, Ontario. She is of mixed ancestry, honoring maternal Polish heritage from Poland and paternal Ojibwe Anishinaabe roots from Whitefish River First Nation, Birch Island, Ontario. Stephanie is a University of Guelph graduate with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology with a minor in Child and Family Studies. Throughout her career, Stephanie has helped organizations within post-secondary education, addiction services, child welfare, and municipal government advance towards decolonization and reconciliation alongside the needs of community. She continues to work closely with First Nations peoples and community by navigating complex government systems to push for change and advocate for accountability, transparency, and healing. And finally, we have Neb Zachariah. Neb Zachariah, she, her, is a reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion advisor on the region of Waterloo's REDI team. Over the course of her career, she has worked in private, not-for-profit, and municipal settings to create inclusive and healthy communities for all. In her current role, Neb works alongside regional staff and community leaders to improve equity, address the impacts of systemic racism, striving to change the way that the region and community work together to listen, learn, act, and collaborate on the community's input. So welcome to all of our guests this evening. We are looking forward to hearing everybody share tonight. So without further ado, we will get into our questions. All right, so starting with, oh, and I just want to catch what Jazz said. Thank you all so much for being here. Really excited for this conversation. Yes, so am I. All right, so we did all of your introductions. However, I think it's important that you are all able to introduce yourselves and what you do as well. So could each of you give a brief description of the work that you're doing? So we can start off with anybody who would like to go first. Maybe if you raise your hands, I can go down the list of the hands raised. All right, we will start with Tina.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here. I'm Tina, and I am the equity leader at Camino Mental Health and Wellbeing. Camino is a mental health agency, and my role within that as equity leader has a couple of different aspects to it, primarily being looking at equity within the organization, looking at policies, practices, looking at client experience, looking at employee experiences. I think a really critical part of that for me is being part of the community that is doing this work. And so it's not in isolation of the work that's done in community with everybody else doing this amazing work. So that's, I think, in a real nutshell, the work that I do. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Tina. Roshan.
Hi, everyone. So Roshan James here. I'm an artist, a poet, and a musician, as you mentioned earlier. Currently, I am doing a lot of research on my own ancestry and working on peeling back a lot of layers and figuring out what do I do with this information, basically. A lot of that also involves decolonizing of my own just everyday life and realizing how conditioned I've been through my upbringing and lived experience, and trying to unpack all of that and figure out how to also then be a parent and a partner and a contributing member of the community as well. And trying to also bring those observations, thoughts, the things that I'm learning to the different tables that I find myself at and that I'm privileged to find myself at. So I'm also on the Lutherwood Canada Board of Governors. I'm really, really passionate about supporting children's mental health and wellness in the community overall, especially when it comes to healing and embodied practices around that. And trying to just support community and community-related things, especially grassroots related initiatives that help to build community through arts. So that's my work in a nutshell right now.
Thank you, Roshan.
Thank you.
Glodine.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yes, my name is Glodine Brown. My day job, I am the public art coordinator at the town of Halton Hills, which is a small municipality just on the outskirts of the GTA. So my role there is to plan, develop, and implement public art projects and initiatives on town-owned land and infrastructure. But that also involves a lot of additional work like policy. I work with artists directly. I'm working with community, doing a lot of education about the arts and why they're important and the value that they bring to communities. So that's what I do in the daytime. I also am a curator at an independent small gallery in Kitchener-Waterloo, an arts and culture writer. So I do some freelance writing for different arts organizations. Sometimes it's like jurying work or facilitating panels or talkbacks, things like that. So a lot of work in the art space, working with artists and working with community.
Amazing. Thank you. Camille.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kamal. I use he, him pronouns. So excited to be here. It's kind of jarring to not know everybody that's in this space. When I'm usually entering a space, I'm like, let's do a round of circle and make sure we know everybody. But I understand that might not be feasible tonight. So if you're on tonight, thanks for being here and nice to meet you virtually. I get to live in downtown Kitchener, very close to Willow River Park. And I've been here since 2015 after I moved here from Mississauga. I'm doing a lot of different things, just like the folks, my fellow colleagues on this panel. Lots of hats being worn as we do on the grassroots level. I'll speak to a couple things. I get to be a restorative justice practitioner at Community Justice Initiatives, which is a restorative justice agency here in Kitchener since the 1960s. I've not been here since the 1960s. The organization has been here since the 1960s. And the work I get to do is applying restorative approaches to identity-based harm. And so that's loaded, and I'll quickly unpack that. We know that there's a lot of variety of harm and hate that happens in our community and across the world as a result of people with differences coming together and trying to coexist. Instances of racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, queerphobia, transphobia, disability discrimination, the list of harm goes on, and so the list of my work goes on. And with deep understanding that the criminal legal system, that colonial practice of applying punitive approaches to accomplish some sort of transformation and shift is false and does not work. We understand that we've been trying to tweak these systems for over 100 years, the system of policing, the system of punitive approaches to create transformation. They don't work. It's time to burn them down, and it's time to create a new. And in an alternative practice would be restorative justice, and that's one where we invite folks who are experiencing harm, who have caused harm, to step into supportive spaces where they can explore accountability, understand impact, and come to understand difference, and come to understand each other differently. And so on a day-to-day basis, I bring people together that have caused harm to one another, particularly identity-based harm. And so that's when somebody's identity was the reason that they were targeted. And so I get to be a mediator, and I get to sit with people's stories, and that can be hard and at the same time very enriching. So I know it sounds fluffy, but we do it every day. And people's, understandings of what it means to be a criminal and what it means to be a target and what it means to be a victim can all get unpacked when we decide to just be human and come together. So get to do that work. And then a few years ago in 2019, my friend Angel and I, as a result of COVID and the city emptying, started to observe systemic issues in ways that we hadn't as students, issues of food insecurity, issues of disenfranchisement, issues of gentrification. And so we thought there has to be something we could do about it. And we were inspired by mutual aid. Mutual aid has existed since time immemorial. Indigenous communities across the world have practiced mutual aid. It's not something new. And mutual aid essentially means neighbors coming together to address neighborhood issues without waiting for central or government. And we recognize that we have challenges in our backyards that we need to address, and we're not going to wait for anybody to do it. So one example of mutual aid is community fridges. Super simple. It's like the fridge in your kitchen, except it's available to everybody in your community. So that's available downtown Kitchener at 300 King Street at the Kitchener Market. Whether you need some food, menstrual products, essential items, you're welcome to come by anytime. It's open 24/7. If you have things to give, you're welcome to stop by and take what you need, leave what you can. That's a project we've been running for close to 3 years. And very recently, we started to work towards food sovereignty. So food insecurity means that, there's people who are hungry in our community and we need to address that. Food sovereignty takes that a little bit more upstream and says, we actually, as individuals, should have the right to decide what we eat, how we eat it, how much we pay for it, where we get it from. And so this project aims to build spaces of public access food. So we've started to grow food downtown Kitchener in public spaces that anybody can take. So if you walk past and you see a tomato ready to go, you eat that tomato. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kamal. Next is Neb.
Thanks so much, Tara. And yeah, thank you for inviting me to be here this evening. I can't say afternoon, this evening. It's an honor to be here and to be part of this panel and to be able to hear from such amazing people in the community. So my name is Neb. My pronouns are she, her. My role, or what I do, I work at the Region of Waterloo on our Reconciliation, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion team. We just call ourselves READY, and I'm an advisor on the team, along with my colleague Stephanie, who you'll hear from in just a minute. And so what that looks like is kind of depends on the day, but in general, my work really aims to support system change, which sounds really lofty, but helping staff at the region to work a little bit differently, to understand what it means to think differently about equity work, and to incorporate it as just a way of being, planning, operating, as opposed to it being a tack-on lens that is applied after programs have been developed. And we invite someone from a racialized or marginalized community to give some input and then say, okay, great, we've checked that equity checklist and we can move on. So really wanting to change the way that we do things. And it's a slow and lengthy process. It's a big organization. So we work as a team. So we've got directors on our team who are working at kind of that policy level, and then we've got others on our team who are working with those who are doing the direct service provision, advising. So it's kind of across the board how we are trying to affect that change. And then I also have the opportunity to work with community members. So working with a lot of the amazing community groups that are part of this panel, or have heard of a lot of the amazing work that they're doing. And one of the things that we are trying to do is to try to give some of that power back to community in the ways that we can. And so some of that is through decision making, some of that is through funding with the upstream funds, and just really trying to also have a little bit more representation and meaningful roles for community in the way that we plan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Neb. Stephanie.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Tara. My name is Stephanie. I use she, her pronouns. Like Neb was saying, she gave a very good overview of what our team does. In addition to that, I focus a little bit on reconciliation for the region as well. So I am a ready advisor for the region of Waterloo, and working very closely with our Director of Truth and Reconciliation, Paula Whitlow. We're really focusing on, addressing the 94 Truth and Reconciliation calls to action within the region. As most folks know, there hasn't been much progress on these calls to action since 2015. So really trying to zone in on what municipalities are responsible for and making sure that we're making moves in that direction. So as Neb was explaining, it's the systemic change that we want to see is never as quick as we would like, but doing a lot of that work internally to really try and champion what the community has been saying for decades, for so long, and actually having these actions be played out in policy, in government, and in the staff from the inside. So although it's not always the easiest thing to see us working on the inside, we are doing it. We are here. We are hired to kind of do this work, but it doesn't always get acknowledged from the outside looking in because we're sneakily doing it on the inside. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to discussing more.
Thank you, everybody, for those wonderful introductions. So our next question, moving on to telling us a little bit about what motivates you in your work. And then as a second piece to that question, if you feel comfortable to share, has your own story influenced how you approach your work? Yeah, Tina, go ahead.
Yeah, so what motivates me? I think it's folks like the folks on this call, like all of you, each one of you. I think knowing that our community and the folks who make our community is like forever changing and constantly shifting and moving, and the needs of this community are shifting and moving, and that we need to kind of open our hearts and minds to embrace that shift and change, and to equip ourselves and create capacity within the community, like we've heard from all these folks here, to create capacity within ourselves to kind of build support systems for that change and shift. That I think is my single most motivating factor. Story that influenced my story that has influenced how I approach my work. I think a primary part of my story is knowing that everybody's story is so complex and layered, right? Like all our stories come with so many different aspects to it. And I think what I've learned over the years has been that no matter how much I think I know someone or something, there's an aspect to that that I probably have no clue about. And that keeps me, up and about and like willing to learn and willing again to open my heart and mind towards that. Because I think the moment we think that we know it and we've got it, I think is a dangerous place to be. So I believe that there's always something that we don't know and we don't know enough about or know it accurately. But I'm going to stop. Slippery slope there.
I feel that so much. It's equity knowledge, like obtaining equity knowledge isn't really like a thing, right? Like it's not a destination, it's an ongoing unlearning of how we've been socialized and so many other things. So I love what you said, Tina. The learning doesn't stop, and when we think we know, we still need to know more. So I really love that you said that. Roshan.
Yeah, thank you, Tara. And yeah, that really resonated for me, Tina, what you said. Makes so much sense. And just to share a little bit about what motivates me in my work. So the one thing that really drives what I do, that's a common thread that I can pick up on, is that I love nurturing connection, seeing how things connect, how people can connect, and also facilitating that and trying to bring people together. Or like if I meet somebody in one sphere of my life and I can see that they would very naturally connect with another person in another sphere of my life, like I love the magic of bringing that together. It brings me immense joy on literally a daily basis. Like it's almost verging on like an obsession, I'll say. I think about it a lot, and I feel like I'm very naturally a dot connector. It's just something that I've always done through the course of like things that I've worked on, even like going back to school, like early education and going through high school. Like I was always trying to bring people together and create bridges too. So, you know, there's so many divides, and especially in equity work, we come across that so much. And there's a lot of polarization around things. And it's like, okay, how do we get through difficult conversations? How do we preserve people's dignity through different, very challenging situations, and still achieve better outcomes and help to create safer places for people without inadvertently, making other people feel othered. So yes, connection is really what drives me. And the reason I think that sort of influenced my work and my perspective is that I'm actually a very, very shy person naturally. And I found when I was very young, I often didn't feel included, or I felt disconnected. And I think low key, that is really why I want to make sure that other people don't feel that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Roshan. Kamal.
Thanks, Tara, and thanks, Tina and Roshan. Yeah, all very resonant. I love that we're building on each other. This is great. This is what community looks like. Where do I start? Yeah, I'm speaking to, for this question specifically, I'm speaking to anyone in the audience that felt as though they were deprived of something, felt as though they missed something, felt as though something was taken away from them and was never given to them. And then to sit with that pain and to think about what you want to do with that pain. You know, do you want to project that pain further? Is that what heals you? To keep that pain going and to keep these circles of pain going, or to disrupt that? Is that what fulfills you? And so I've had to sit with that for a long time as a first generation immigrant that did not fit in, that was bullied relentlessly for a variety of reasons, that did not find safety at home. And so nobody asked me things that I get to ask people now. Nobody asked me how I was doing. Nobody asked me what I needed. Nobody asked me what support or what walking alongside me would look like. And after years of scrutinizing that pain, I've come to the place that, like, what an epic privilege that I get to do that for somebody else, even though it wasn't done for me. And in that, there is like a lot of fulfillment and healing for me. So I'm not this saint. Like, it's all very selfish, really. It's like to heal my own spirit. And so I didn't feel like I had agency or choice. And so the work I get to do is embedded in understanding that people who need stuff know exactly what they need. And it's not our place to tell them what they need. It's our place to potentially walk alongside them in figuring that out. the power of like the transformative power of human connection motivates me. Like I said, as someone who immigrated here and struggled to find my place, I've come to learn that there is so much power in sitting with one another, and not just sitting with one another to be with an agenda, but to sit with one another simply to exist with one another. And what can happen when you are invited into somebody else's world and you receive that world as one that does exist. It might not be yours, but it does exist. And so there's so much power there that happens when we come together. And I think the final motivator is joy. I think a lot of us as organizers and people who work in this space forget about that there's a discipline of joy that we need to bring into our work to not burn out, to continue doing this work, and to do this work from a place of heart, not a place of like head or gut, but to do this from our heart. And to do that, you need to be surrounded by care. You can't offer care if you're not receiving care. And that's a discipline that I've come to learn, and my own story and how that's influenced my work. I hope you can hear that across everything that I've shared. But for example, in the work that I get to do as a mediator, I feel like I grew up with conflict. That's what I said when I interviewed at Community Justice Initiatives. I didn't go to school for this stuff. Forget credentialism. Hear it from me first, but you might not hear it from others. But forget credentialism. It's like I grew up with conflict. All parts of my identity were in conflict with one another based on what I was told. And to sit with multiple truths and to say, hey, there's a third truth here. There's a third truth that I can identify for myself. And that's the one that I'm going to lean into. And that's the work that I get to do every day. I get to bring two people together who have two different truths and say, hey, there's potential here for a third truth. Can you come to see it and step into it? And then in the work I get to do as a community organizer, I grew up in poverty in Pakistan, and that's a direct correlation of wanting to create systemic change. And something I experienced in my undergraduate degree at Laurier, blah, 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 was that if you're not creating systemic change, you're not having an impact. And that really stuck with me because I was like, oh my God, how am I going to create systemic change as this 26-year-old? And I've come to learn that, like, if I can get one food hamper to a family who has food that night, because then that enables them to make decisions for themselves, that enables them to get to work if they need to the next day or take care of their children, that is good enough. I'm going to sleep easy. So impact is not A to Z. Impact can just be A. Pick your front, stand firmly at that front. Just our life is so short. So I get to make small droplets alongside these incredible, beautiful people who have become chosen family, like Roshan on this panel. And so if you're out there and you're like, I don't have anybody, I don't know what my supports are, the people that you hope to serve will become your supports, just like you become theirs. So thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Kamal. I want to second what Roshan said in the chat here. You are a gift to the community. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of that with us tonight. Glodine.
So building on Roshan and Kamal, I love meeting people. I love connecting people. I've had several experiences in my life where I was excluded or information was withheld from me for, racism, sexism. So I love sharing what I know, with other people, helping them connect. There is a lot of inequity in the arts as a whole. There's so much education that has to be done in the arts about, value, paying artists fairly, from the top, like, granting systems, who's getting money to do what projects. It's a whole big ongoing conversation. A great example is, the beginning of the pandemic when everything was shut down. What did we do? Everybody went right to the arts. We were like, streaming movies, we were reading books, we were like watching, artists work hard online for free or like no money. So artists bring value. I really believe in the power of the arts to connect us, to change us. So I've long time been an advocate for artists, fair pay for artists, helping them connect with different resources, education, connecting them to other artists. So that's what motivates me. I love helping other people, helping people get information that I didn't have before, and just always educating people about, art is important, artists are important, they are doing important work, they deserve to be paid fairly. Don't, discount the labor that they're doing. It's actually work. They are educated. This is work that, they have to do. Like, this is, their calling, and they're sharing this information with us. And it is, art has the power to transform and to change. So that's what keeps me going. I love meeting artists. I love talking to artists. I love introducing them to other people. So that's my motivation.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Yes. Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you. So many great people on this call. Like, my goodness. Wow, I'm just lost in your words. But I think what I can speak to is, when I'm working and doing this work, something that always grounds me in my work is our youth and our kiddos. I think where it all started for me is the night that I closed my eyes for the first time in a foster care home. I told myself that that night when I closed my eyes, and I knew that my whole world had kind of been ripped apart, and there was nothing I could do about it. A government structure had struck down on my family. All of my siblings and I were separated, and we were in foster care. And I knew that the fight was just beginning. So something that motivated me and put me in the career path that I was in was just the inequities that I had faced as a young kiddo myself. And it really had shaped where I was going and the goals that I was pursuing for myself. So, I always ground myself in young me when I was little and what really shaped my vision and my truth and my goals for myself. But to keep me grounded in the work that we all do, and it's tough work, right? Like, you're hearing it through so many different voices. It's really, really tough work. I always think back to our kiddos, our youth, and the 7 generations we have ahead of us to really heal everything that we can, and just keep the progression moving forward, because there's so much work to be done, no matter what you're interested in. But if we do it with a good mind and a good heart, we'll keep going.
Yes, I am so with you there. That was beautiful. Neb.
Thank you. Echoing what Stephanie said, I would happily not be part of this panel. I'll just sit and listen to the wisdom being shared. This group is fantastic. And yeah, pretty well everything that the group has shared already has resonated. I think that we kind of all have that same passion for connecting people, connecting with people, and really wanting to see the current generation and future generations thriving in a way that maybe we haven't, or previous generations haven't. And so particularly what Kamal was saying just around being an immigrant and coming to this country and not really feeling like I fit in, not really seeing myself in my classmates, and feeling very much as though I wasn't part of the community. And so I felt that on a daily basis, like it was just, you don't see yourself represented anywhere, and it can feel very isolating. And so I think that has a lot to do with what led me to what I'm doing and what motivates me. So when I speak with community members, or I speak with organizers who are doing work, and they talk about, this opportunity has really helped the youth that we work with to feel like, our community here actually recognizes us and appreciates us and sees us. They feel like through the programming or through the opportunities that I've had a part in, they feel as though they're respected and seen as part of the community. I truly feel like that's something that I'm honored to be a part of, because as Kamal said again, I get to be a part of that. I get to be a part of creating that sense of belonging for someone who potentially was in the same position as I was in a couple of years ago. And I think that, again, like just wanting to really see systems change and wanting systems to really understand how the way that we're set up and the way that we operate right now is really harmful and detrimental to so many people in our communities, and that we need to change. I mean, I've seen it throughout my life, but particularly I have a brother who struggles with mental illness, and there's been a number of times where we've had conversations as a family about, we do need to get him help, but is getting him help through systems that are available more detrimental to him than just us as a family trying to support him? And having those conversations is not something that like you should be able to trust the systems that are there to care for, to be respectful of, and to understand the needs of residents. And I think that that's I've seen it so many times, the conversations that we've had and the realities that we've come to a decision as a family that we'll try to navigate this internally, or try to navigate it in different ways, so that we're not basically putting him in danger or putting him in a vulnerable position. So I think that that's really what motivates me day to day, is really wanting to see systems change so that that's not the reality for so many families. I mean, I think our healthcare system and our mental health supports are just one part of that. There's so many other broken systems and broken ways of working that, I really hope that I can be a part of changing.
Oh, thank you so much, everybody, for all of your answers. I'm really just taking all of this in, and I know as a facilitator, I feel privileged to be here and to hear from all of you. So thank you so much. All right. So our next question, I put this in here because being a post-secondary program for new incoming students to the university, I wanted to ask, was there anybody along the way in your post-secondary journey that has inspired you to do the work that you're doing now? Yeah, Tina.
I don't plan to be going first all the time, so if someone else wants to do so, please do so. It is purely accidental. I'm not one to be the first to speak, so I'm kind of surprising myself here a little bit. Yeah, so I have this story which is really has stayed with me all along. Without aging myself, many years ago, when I did go in to study, I had to study Braille, and I studied Braille in English, Hindi, and math, and I found it really hard because ultimately 6 dots and a combination of 6 dots made all of this happen. So I found it really hard, and I would, kind of crib and complain like a lot, as any student would. And my professor then had said that, I can walk away and it's a choice and I get to make it and it's fine. But for people who use Braille for their everyday learning, for their everyday access to information, it's not a choice, right? And that stayed with me. That so for so many of us, we think the work of equity is a choice, right? Like we get to do it or not. And we get to walk away, and maybe life, like the privilege we hold and the gifts we hold and the blessings we hold will ensure that it doesn't impact us. But for so many others, the oppression, the hate, the discrimination is real, and it's not a choice. The fear they live with is not a choice. And that, I think, has been my single factor that has kept me going, has been that for some of us, none of this is a choice, right? Like we wake up in the morning and that's what we face, and we go to bed at night, and that's what we go to bed with. That's my story. So that's the professor who I think has led me all the way here.
Thank you, Tina, for sharing that. Kamal.
Thanks, Tara. Thanks, Tina. Oh my God, so many people. I could just sit here and read a list of people, but I will just maybe point out a story that captures all of it. Halfway through my undergraduate degree, I went to Laurier to study international development and political science. I was moving from Mississauga to Waterloo in 2015 to do that. And halfway through my degree, my given family, so my birth family, had asked that I don't return. And so that was a point of pain. And once again, that theme that carries through my life when I get buried on my gravestone, it will say pain into purpose. And that because I think that's the thread that carries me and wakes me up every day, that there is a direct correlation between the stuff that we go through and the pain that we experience and what we decide to do with it in terms of how it informs our purpose. And in that moment, I was devastated when I learned that decision. And at the same time, I had nothing left to lose. And when you have nothing left to lose, you have everything left to gain. And so I leaned so far into milking the time that I had. I knew that I wouldn't have the privilege of going back to school. I knew that I probably didn't want to do that anyway. And so I milked every opportunity, every office hour there was, every professor there was around that I resonated with, every student that I connected with. I was that annoying person who was like, hey, do you want to hang out after class? And people are like, we have things to do and parties to get to. And I was like, can we just hang out? And so people like Keon and Sarah and Stephen and Perry and Fran really showed me how to love. Like they showed me how to like receive love, and they showed me how to experience space being held for me. And that's what taught me how to do the same for the work that I get to do now and in the work that I get to do now, how to sit with your pain and transform it into something meaningful, how to lean into your power. Like there's a reason that we were put in this time and place. I'm going to get so nerdy here, but Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, in the third book, says this quote, and he says, or the character says, we don't get to choose the time that we have, but we get what we get to choose is what we do with it. And that has stuck with me this whole time. And what I get to do with it is a variety of different things. And what you get to do with it is probably a different variety of things, but lean all the way into that because there's a reason you're here. And there's gifts that you've got and you can choose to give them, you can choose to keep them. But there's that power that you do have. And so people showed me how to love, and that's how that's what I wake up with every day. And that's the language that I've been taught that I get to share back with community. And so that's what keeps me going. And so if you're in school now, which I think most of the folks on this panel and those who will be watching it later are, look around. There's people who've been put around you for a reason that you get to lean into. People like Tara, people like your professors, friends in your classrooms, people that you would not have otherwise engaged with, but they're there sharing this land and time with you for a reason. So look around, babes. You're privileged.
Oh my gosh. I could be here all night on this call. Roshan.
Wow, I feel like I may not have had the as inspiring folks around me or the perspective at the time to pick up on the magic that was around. And I actually feel like that's part of my reflection now and thinking back on who I was surrounding myself with during that time period in school. It was such a fraught time period. So there was a lot of just difficult relationships because I didn't feel like I actually fit in and disconnect because of that too. Queens was a really rough place to be when I was going there, and there was a lot of divides, and I actually had to leave that university to go over to York and found so much more community there and professors who I felt like I could resonate with and wanted to be around. And there were a couple in particular that once I finally got to that place, I felt like, I can actually learn from these people and felt so much safer. And they were people who were, so I will age myself too, Tina. So this is going back a couple of decades, maybe 3 decades, if I'm being honest. At the time, it was really, I'll say, progressive for what they were talking about and thinking about and how they were holding space in their classrooms. And one person in particular was a trans professor at that time and taught decolonizing theory. And I could not make sense of it at the time because I was still in a space that I just couldn't access it. I couldn't. There was a block there, mentally, emotionally, spiritually even. And thinking about that now, I feel like the work that I do now, I think about Terry and that class so much. And the things that I know now, the things that I've lived through, if I could just go back and sit through some of those lectures, work on that work that we were doing at the time, I feel like it would be just a totally different experience. But it inspires me because we were doing that at that point, and it was theory and it was difficult, but look at where we're at now in the broader discourse and what we can talk about in more depth and with more applied knowledge. It's not just theory anymore. And then I had a professor who was actually Terry's partner. And that's a whole other side story, little rabbit hole to go down. But Deanne, I learned so much from her about curiosity and feeling my research with that curious lens of digging deeper and always going a layer and a step further to figure out like the real richness of a story and a narrative and the so what and connections to history and connections to language and things that we were studying at that point. So those are some of the things that I picked up along the way, and they still sit with me now in my practice, because a lot of what I do is personal inquiry and inquiry into subjects that I'm researching. And it's always, it's always tricky to actually continue to push yourself to keep going, because it can be just very exhausting. So knowing how to do that, how to pace yourself through the research, that's sat with me and continues to feel what I do. A little more on the practical side. Sorry.
No, thank you, Roshan. And thank you for sharing about a time in which you weren't accessing information that was in front of you, right? Because I think it's really important, especially in equity work, for us to have those moments where we say, yeah, there was a time when I didn't get this, when I wasn't processing it, when I wasn't accessing that information, and now I'm here. I think that's really important to acknowledge. So thank you so much. Glodine.
Thank you.
Oh, well, my experiences might not be as inspiring. I have 3 post-secondary experiences. So I've studied interior design, corporate communications, and arts administration and cultural management. So I have had some good instructors. I've also had some not great instructors. So for me, like, there's maybe a couple people that stand out, but if I'm being honest, the people that inspire me are the people that I've met in class, like the people that I've connected with in class. Those people have inspired me, I think, more than any like instructors or professors. And that's kind of where my inspiration comes from. Sorry, it's not as moving as some of the other stories with professors, but it's the people that I'm in class with, that I've connected with, that I'm still friends with and still connected with, who are colleagues today in different things. Those are the people that I found inspiration from.
That is absolutely inspirational, Glodine. I think we don't give enough credit to our peers, our classmates, our friends, when we have these conversations either, right? Like I so much of the learning that I've done is actually learning through friends that carry different intersections in their identities. So yeah, absolutely. That is still inspiring. Neb.
Yeah, I actually have basically the exact same response as Glodine. I was going to share that I don't know that I have a professor or any sort of mentor or lecturer that really kind of mentored me during my post-secondary years, but I did have a group of friends who we made amazing connections and have grown together, continue to, and just like the types of conversations, the kinds of observations we would make. And we think back on some of the conversations we had during our undergrad and master's, and we're all, or many of us are working in an EDI field, applying some of those things, not necessarily what we studied, but were certainly things that we had talked about and were passionate about through those years. So I can't remember who said it earlier, but truly look around, because the people that you're with, who are in your space, will likely have a really important role in your career and even just your life moving forward.
Yes. Yes. Oh. All right. Well, we've made it to our 4th question. which is this program is for equity deserving students. What would you say are important factors in fostering equitable spaces? Yeah, Tina.
I'm on a roll. As folks who belong to equity deserving groups, I think a very important piece that I think we need to uphold, and Kamal has mentioned this, that you know what you need. You shouldn't be afraid to ask for it, right? Make space for yourself, right? Find yourself in spaces, because I think a lot of times we're used to letting others speak for us. We're used to having thoughts put in front of it, like, decisions made for us. I think we take up space. We take up space. We say what we need, and unapologetically, I say fearlessly, loosely, but like knowing that there's power in the voice that you carry, in the experiences that you carry, and in the stories that you bring, no matter where they're from, no matter what that looks like, in the pain that you carry, in privilege that you carry, all of it, right? And so know that, shine that brightly, bring that forward brightly, find your people. I think that is the strength that we each bring. And I think for the rest of us, I think listening to the strong voices and to the voices who are afraid to speak up, to the silence in the room, right? We started the conversation with the silence. It's a very, very integral part of the work that I do, is sitting in a room full of people that are usually sometimes silent, and knowing that silence carries weight. That people, it's not because they don't have anything to say or because they don't know what to say, right? And so I think that's a really important piece for me.
Yes, Tina, thank you so much for that. And that's always a consistent reminder that I need, as I said at the beginning of this call, getting comfortable with that silence. So thank you for bringing that point back around. Kamal.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. You're always so articulate and always come from the heart. So it's so nice to hear you speak. Yeah, what would you say are important factors in fostering equitable spaces? I raised my hand because I got to use the washroom, so I was hoping I'd raise my hand and then I'd go use the washroom really quickly, but maybe it's backfiring. When you're in a classroom or you're in a space and the teacher says, like, yeah, ask your question. If you're thinking of a question, there's probably somebody else in the room who's also thinking that question. So raise your hand and ask that question. It's very much so the same thing. Think about what you need. Like Tina was saying, what are your needs? All of us on this planet, in this time and place, have unmet needs. Take some time to think about what your unmet needs are. And because if you've got them, somebody else has them too. And theirs might look different, but it allows you to tap into perspective and to be able to hold that space. When you take up space as an equity deserving individual, you make space for somebody else as well. Remember that. And so it is both an honor and both a duty that as we take up space, that we are making space, and we are doing that with intentionality. Every single person has a backpack of things that they're holding in them. So in a lot of the work that I get to do, I invite folks, when they begin, before they start talking about their criminal charge or before they start talking about how they've experienced harm, I ask them to think about what's in their backpack. What did you bring into this room with you today? What's in there? And I'm not asking you to put it down. I'm not asking you to throw it out. I'm just asking you to look at it. Open your backpack and look at what's inside. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the principles I carry in my work is unconditional positive regard. And unconditional positive regard speaks to holding space for whatever is in that other person's backpack, and to face that without judgment, with deep recognition that there are some ugly things in your backpack too, babes. And when we hold space for each other's backpacks, that is a unconditionally positive space that we offer. And that is what I feel as though creates equitable spaces. The other quick little principles that I'll throw at you, and whether they stick or not, that's fine. If the pasta falls off the wall, let it fall off the wall. Something that I've said in my practice is fall in love with the problem that you seek to do something about. Don't fall in love with your solution. Do not fall in love with your solution. Fall deep, deep, deep in love. Obsess over the problem that you want to combat, because that is what's going to drive the constant evolution of how you address it. Once you fall in love with your solution, you bring your Kool-Aid into the work. And if I'm speaking in way too many metaphors, I'll unpack that. To drink your own Kool-Aid in doing your work means that you brought your pride and your ego. You made it personal. It wasn't about the cause. So fall in love with the problem. Keep your pride and ego far away and think about what's needed. What are those unmet needs? And then as you do that, look deep in yourself and think about what your gifts are. You know, Joe and Stephanie Mancini, who started the Working Center, regardless of what you think about the Working Center has done incredible work in this region to support unhoused people and to support vulnerable people. And in their book, Introduction to Common Work, which I highly recommend everybody pick up and read at some point in their life, they talk about gifts. They talk about how all of us have gifts. We're not talking about just money. We're not talking about just degrees. We're not talking about just qualified and legitimate skills. We're talking about gifts that we have. I have a gift that might just look like I have a car and I have time and I can fill gas in that car and I can take somebody around. Or I might have a gift of understanding how to navigate a health system, or I have a gift of public speaking, or I have a gift of, organizing and moving. Whatever your gifts are, apply them to that problem you fell in love with, because there's a reason you've been put in this time and place, and you need to have deep recognition of what your gifts are. And then finally, Tina mentioned it, but a place that is equitable, I think, is one that leads with love and leads with curiosity, is open to journeying alongside people, making mistakes together. Walk with, don't walk for. Thanks.
Yes. And Kamal, you are free to go to the washroom at any point. All right. I think just in the interest of time, we're going to move on to our final questions so that we can open up the floor. So finally, we have been asking each of our guests throughout this program at the end of a panel, who is in your community? So what do you need personally to support your sense of belonging and community? Yeah, Claudine, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go first this time. I think having a good network is really important. So, my family, my friends, people who understand you and the work that you're doing. I also have some close friends that are Black, it makes such a great difference to have friends that just kind of understand what you're going through without you having to explain all the details and do the extra labor. Sometimes it's just like a look, or you just have to say something and they know, and it's just, so there's a lot of power in that kind of community where, just be like, yeah, I know, because we've all experienced it. We're all, we're kind of going through the same thing sometimes at the same time. So that's been really important for me as well too. I have a lot of artists in my network, which is really soul filling. Yeah.
Thank you. Roshan.
So for me, I need people like Claudine, like Kamal, like the folks on this panel, because they inspire me. They help me feel so much safer to put forward my ideas, my thoughts, my work, just to be out and about in community, like walking around town. There's just something that's so beautiful when you see a friend on the street when you're walking by, and this has happened to us, right, Kamal? I love it. It's the best. And yeah, it does feel like an extended family and chosen family. And that's really important to me because for the longest time, from my family, my parents were very, very conditioned under white supremacist colonialism because of their backgrounds, and they carried that forward unwittingly. We're all healing from that. But because of that, we were very much distanced from the rest of our family. So I grew up not really knowing a lot about my culture, not really knowing a lot about my heritage. And I'm coming to that now and through the work that I'm doing now. So connecting with folks, like Claudine said, there's something really special about, sitting with people and being around people who are from your culture and know so much more about things that you may have known more about if you were more connected into culture and ancestry and lineage. So for me, that's really, really important right now, spending time with those folks, having my family around me, my kids, and sharing these experiences with them. As I learn, they're learning too. My partner's also learning. He has a very different background than I do and a very different upbringing. He had a very different upbringing than I did, but there's lots of things that we do share too. So trying to just hold space for all of that. That's very much part of my community as well. I'll just leave it there because I feel like I don't want to keep rambling, but yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to leave a couple of minutes at the very end to give folks a chance to access our evaluation link for this. So, does the audience, anybody on the call, have any questions for our panelists tonight? Does anybody maybe have any thoughts that kind of really resonated with them as we were listening to our panelists tonight? If you don't have questions, you can certainly add any kind of thoughts that you have or comments for our panelists as well.
Me being who I am, I'm going to jump in here and offer whoever's watching this panel a question. You don't have to respond in the comments, but I remember when I was a little bit younger, I remember somebody had asked me about like what's happening inside of me when I experience something, and that was the first time I had been asked that question, and it felt like a burden, and later came to realize that it was a gift. And so I asked you the same question of what's happening inside, as you've heard from this esteemed panel of people plus me. Like what's resonating, what's making you uncomfortable? Is there anything that's making you uncomfortable? Sort of cling on to what's making you uncomfortable. When I was in school and I would attend panels like this, the thing that came up for me was discomfort, that I would never get to this point, of creating this impact. And we've told you a very flowery experience or a version of our stories. And so sit with that. Is something making you uncomfortable? Do you feel like you'll never get there? You'll never be that thing? Sit with that and reach out. I'm open to being reached out to anytime to chat about it. So think about what's happening for you.
Speaking of reaching out, if folks on the panel are comfortable with us sharing contact information, if you could maybe just shoot me an email sometime after this panel and let me know if you're comfortable and open to that, so that we can provide students with your contacts, that would be great. All right, I see a question from Jazz. So is there anything that you'd share with your younger self about where you are in your life now? I often reflect on how I could have never imagined life at the age I am now. All right, Roshan, you want to answer that one first?
Yeah, thank you, Tara. It's like Jazz, you read my mind, because I was actually thinking as Kamal was speaking about the fact that I wouldn't have any clue that I'd be sitting here doing this type of thing tonight with all of you when I was in my undergrad or even in grad school. Like, it just wouldn't have occurred to me. It would have felt very, very lofty. Like, there's all these like experts and people who have done all these like incredible, amazing things. And I don't necessarily mean that as a reflection on me. I just mean, you know, you get to hear so many different stories, and stories about experiences that might be so different than your own too, in many ways. So all I would say is that you literally never know how things are going to flow out through your life, what you're going to be challenged with, what you're going to be thinking, even what your life view might be in 10, 20, 30 years. I feel like I've gone through different lifetimes basically since my 20s. Like, I am not the same person that I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I just, complete 180, 360, a different dimension altogether. So, like, and if I look back even 10 years ago, I was in a corporate role. Like, I was a business leader, and I was so proud of that and that persona and the mask. And I wore that, with a lot of ego, really. And you find over the years, you do end up stripping away, or maybe just life does that to you. Definitely does, from my personal experience. Whittles you down, and you start to question more and more about, what do you believe, and why do you think what you do, and why did your parents think what they did? And if I could offer anything, is just to offer yourself a lot of compassion. You're going to be going through a lot of different changes as you get into new school, get into different environments, different social groups, social settings. Not all of it is going to feel comfortable or immediately accessible, and it can feel so culturally different. And allow yourself to be uncomfortable with it. Like Kamal was saying, learn from that discomfort. Don't let it push you away from really rich growth experiences.
Yes, oh, that resonates very much. Tina, we'll go to you, and then we've only got about 4 minutes left. So go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I think often we're told, you should never sweat the small stuff, right? Like, you should let the small stuff go. I think if I would tell my younger self to really pay attention to the small stuff, right? Like, all the really tiny details. If I don't know if any of you've watched this, there's this video about like doing your bed, like make your bed in the morning, and it's like a task that it gets done. And you know how it's basically about like accomplishing stuff during the day. But like things like that, which I don't know, if I had to tell my younger self like to do a do-over, that's what I would pay attention to, is the small stuff during the day that you have control over, that you can make an impact, and that is like just within your realm of reality and influence at this time and being, right? And so the big stuff will come, it'll come, you'll get there, right? It's the small stuff. It's the people you meet, the conversations you're having, the coffees, the teas, whatever that may be. The other piece, I think, is I recently told someone how I feel in this role, that I've kind of like arrived somewhere, right? Like, it feels really like, this is where I need to be. And they corrected me and said, for now, you're here for now. Right? This time now feels right. It may not feel right 10 years from now. And I think that for now is a great place to be, right? Because that 3-dimension, multi-dimensional thing that Roshan was saying is real. It's an actual thing. And no one can prepare us for that. So for now, here's where you are today. Here's where you are for now. And that's good enough.
I love that. And I think that that's a really great note to end on. So thank you so much, Tina, for that. Thank you, all of you, so much for bringing your energy, for bringing your full selves to this conversation tonight. I am so grateful that you could be here and offer such important and valuable knowledge and experience with the students that are here tonight, as well as those watching the recording. So thank you so much, and thank you for being a part of this community. Yes, incredible discussion tonight. So thank you, everybody. So I will note before we sign off, students that are attending here and also those that are watching the recording, we have a short feedback form that we would love if you could fill out for us. It really helps us know how to improve the program and helps us know how you're enjoying the program. So it is a short series of questions. I'm putting the link in the chat currently. So we do this evaluation to know what we're doing well. We do evaluation to improve the program for you. And we also do evaluation to share the impact of the program with the university and the organization that funds this program. So that all being said, we compile your answers and we do use that information to do all of the things that I just explained, but it's all anonymous always. So your name will never be attached to the feedback that you have shared. So I'd like to note that as well. So if you are able to fill out the short evaluation survey for us, we would really appreciate it. And again, it is anonymous. So thank you so much, everybody. This was really incredible, and I really hope that we can connect with all of our panelists in the future. We would love to see you and have these discussions again. So have a wonderful evening, everybody, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great
Bye,
evening.
everyone.
Take care, folks. Stay well.